I don't know what was going on, man. I try when I do it from my laptop, it's not allowing me to get in, but when I do it from my phone, it allows me to get in. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you taking the time um, to jump on. So, if you don't mind, I can open it up to just some introductions because I know some of our Instagram crowd is sometimes a little bit younger, maybe just a little bit before you were there. So I'd love to give everyone a little bit of background on myself and then turn it over to you. So everyone knows, I mean, my name is Matt. My handle is Penn State Jerseys on Instagram. Again, never played, just a huge fan, collect all the jerseys, love Penn State. It's my passion, and really the purpose of my page is to share my passion with Penn State football with all the players that played, guys who are currently playing, and kind of help bridging that gap, because I feel like guys like yourself who played just before that social media push, aren't as prevalent with some of the current or younger fans. And a lot of my page kind of celebrates the history and the contributions you and LeVar and Courtney made to kind of make the program what they are. So I'd love to turn it over to you if you want to start just by introducing yourself to the crowd, especially for some of the youngins that aren't aware of, weren't quite there when you were at Penn State.
Right, no problem, no problem. Yeah, James Boyd, strong safety, free safety. Came to Penn State 96, 97 year, drafted in 2001 by the Jaguars, third round. I was a part of that Joe Paterno team. We had some great defenses back in the day. We was pretty loaded. I'm sure everybody know LeVar Arrington, the name, Courtney Brown, Brandon Short, those guys, David Macklin, all those guys. So I played with all those guys.
Sure. And so you mentioned kind of a Penn State and Paterno. What was your recruiting process like to Penn State back in the day? I know right now everything's so public on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and the whole idea of handwritten letters by coaches seems to be so foreign. So curious what your process was like when you showed up on Penn State's radar. How did that interest begin to build, and maybe what led you to eventually picking Penn State?
Well, I was the number two safety number two athlete in the country coming out of high school, and I had one of my high school coaches, my defensive coordinator. He was a Pennsylvania guy, so he was from Pennsylvania, but he lived in Virginia. At the end of my freshman year, I was like, I want to go to camp, and so he was like, let's go to Penn State camp. So we ended up going to Penn State camp in the summertime and a few different camps, and then one of my former guy that played at my high school. Ended up going to Chris Snyder. He played defensive end. He was already at Penn State. So I was in the seventh grade.
Wow.
And in seventh grade, in Chesapeake, where I'm from, our seventh grade middle school team, we scrimmage our junior varsity team. And so we scrimmage in one day. Our high school coach is watching, and he had a guy with him. So he come over, and we 7th and 8th graders, and we giving it to the ninth graders and 10th graders. I mean, we had a pretty good team, and so our high school coach is over there watching, and he has a guy with him. So at the end of the scrimmage, he was like, James, come here for a second. I want to introduce you to somebody. I was in the 7th grade, and he was like, this is Bill Kinney, the Penn State offensive line coach. And I was like, just introduction. I was 7th grade. Right, okay. So, from there, it was always a thing with Penn State. I end up, because at that time, my favorite team was Syracuse. If you asked me then, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I would have told you I was going to Syracuse. But from that point, meeting those guys, and then every year at the end of my freshman year in high school, I was at Penn State football camp. So that was kind of my introduction to Greg Schiano, Tom Brantley, Joe Paterno, and Bill Kinney, and Kenny Jackson, and the whole staff.
Got it. Now, did Joe make any visits to your high school?
He did. So I was in class one day, and I was in my English class. My teacher her name was Sean Edmonds, who I love to death. So I'm in the classroom, and they knock on the door. They said, somebody here to see you. And I'm like, somebody here to see me. And it was like, yeah. So my mom, I see my mom, that then we opened the door and Coach Paterno was standing behind her. So, we just kind of walked around and talked. So it was exciting.
Got it. Got it. No, it's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting story. So it seems like your relationship with a current player, excuse me, somebody you played high school with was pretty instrumental in your decision to join Penn State. You mentioned that recruiting class. So I was doing some research before he came on, and actually you were part of the number one recruiting class in the country
Mm-hmm.
at the time. So
Right.
I guess you would be considered a five-star, being a
Right.
second highest safety. So just for some of the listeners, kind of throw out some of the names in your class. So obviously you had yourself, LeVar, Bruce Branch, who had a hell of a career at Penn State, actually held the record for most career punt returns for
Yeah.
touchdowns.
Correct.
With 4. Sam Crenshaw, who was a nice player.
Yeah.
Omar Easy, who
Mm-hmm.
I think would have had a nice long NFL career if it was for his knee injury. John Gilmore.
Yeah.
Was a good tight end. Ron Graham,
Mm-hmm.
solid linebacker. Bao
Yeah.
Kareem McKenzie,
Mm-hmm.
nice career with the Jets, and then Tony Stewart. So that was quite a haul with you, Bruce Brants, and Bao just from a secondary
Mm-hmm.
right there to get three NFL guys in one recruiting class. That was pretty impressive. Did you ever, like, when you first got to campus, was there a fanfare around this recruiting class at the time? I mean, I know it was so much different where you just had magazines and newspapers compared to the 24-hour news cycle, but did you guys come in with like a sense of like, hey, like we really got something here together, to something we're going to be building for the next couple years? Did you guys really realize how good that class was when you got to campus?
Yeah, we did. The funny thing about it is we all played in the high school All-American game in Florida. So
Okay.
I remember sitting in the airport in Tampa, headed to I think it was in West Hollywood or somewhere in Florida. So I remember sitting in the airport in my connection flight, and this Jamaican dude come over. He looked like he just well put together. Looked like a professional athlete at the time. I didn't know who it was. So we were sitting there. He come over and he started talking. But he had on the Penn State shirt, and I have a Penn State shirt. It's Omar Easy. So we started talking, and that's kind of how we met. And we all went down to the senior game. I don't think LeVar played because at the time I think he was the number one overall player in the country, and I don't think he played in the game. So we played in the game. We all met Jordan Caruso as well, and some other guys that was in that class. So we kind of met there, as an initial meeting, all of us, before we got on campus. And then when we kind of got to campus, it was a lot of talk around that class because we was the number one class in the country, and I think the year before that they had either the number one or number two class in the country as well, with David Macklin and Brandon Short and all those guys and Rashard Casey. They all was there, so I think they had the number one class the year before. So it was a lot of talk around that class, that 96, 97 class, and I can remember Joe. Joe. He was all about not playing freshmen, and it was 3 of us that didn't redshirt: myself, LeVar Arrington, and Kareem McKenzie. And so he didn't really believe in playing freshmen, but I think we pushed him to the limit so much. He was like, "Well, I got to play him. We got to play him." So that was kind of how that worked out for us.
Yeah, no, I remember. It's pretty special group. So I got to ask you. So I have something here, that now that you mention it. Being a collector, I have all types of little trinkets, and LeVar and you being two of my favorite players. So that first game, I don't know if you remember this is an original student ticket from the game, 1997. So this was your guys' first game. This was the kind of season ticket version.
Right.
Hopefully get this signed one day. But what was that like? Your first game, Beaver Stadium. You're playing Pitt. The team was actually on the cover of Sports Illustrated that year, right? Number one going into the season. Curtis Enos, Joe Jaravicius, Shamar Finney, Mike McQueary, quarterback returning. Like, what was that experience like? First time running out on the field, Beaver Stadium, playing Pitt, and kind of getting a feeling of what big time college football is like.
I mean, it was exciting just running out on the field. I think for me at the time, I wasn't really that fond, or I didn't really know a lot about the Penn State Pitt rival.
Hmm.
And then obviously all the guys that was on the team from Pennsylvania and the New Jersey area, they probably knew more about it than we did. But it was just exciting to be playing at that level. It's always wanted to be playing at that, at a big time level, and just getting in the game, just coming through the tunnel for the first time was just super exciting.
Yeah, yeah, no, that must be pretty overwhelming. And then now with all the
I, and
fanfare, the lights, and the,
I think it's actually a picture with me, LeVar, coming out right beside Joe and running out.
Mhm.
I have it, and I'm sure that might be the game because I had on number 20 and LeVar had on number 11, and I had number 20 our freshman year, so um, 24 I think it was. And so then that had to be the game, but it was very exciting, man. It was a very exciting time, and we were so young, we were so hungry, we just wanted to play.
So I had to ask you that I didn't know, and I'm a little embarrassed because I know I like to think I know everything about the jerseys. So how did you get assigned 24? Did Spider give you 24? And then how was you able
It
to
might.
move to
I
the
think it
number
was
six?
20. I think it was
20.
20. It was number 20. It was 20. It was 20. Spider
Okay.
assigned it. Spider assigned it to me probably
Mhm.
with Tom Bradley, whoever made that decision. But at the end of my freshman year, I didn't want to. I wanted a single digit number. And in high school, I was number 5. So I was like, okay, let me see what's available. And I know Aaron Collins was leaving,
Mhm.
so I was like, okay, let me look at getting number 6. I want to try something different. So that's kind of how I ran it. Started wearing number 6.
Got it, got it. And taking us back to that 97 season, obviously playing as a freshman, it was certainly not common back then as it is now. What was the first game you got in that you saw major action? And then what was your kind of feeling after the game, after kind of taking it all in and being able to kind of reflect on it?
I was kind of heavy in the rotation. Probably the first 2 or 3 games, it was more special teams, and you'll get a play here or now. You'll get a special group on against if they out and we in nickel or dime, we go in that way. So for the first 3 or 4 games, and then probably later towards the season, start to get a little bit more snaps on defense. And it was tough because Joe really didn't believe in playing freshmen.
Hmm.
So and we play if we if the game get exciting, we
Hmm.
show it. And
Yeah.
the old man really wasn't into that. And so it was times I remember we was playing I think Bowling Green or somebody my freshman year, and I kind of caught somebody on the skinny post and just kind of crushed them. And I ain't even do that. I ain't even do that. I just stood over top of him, and Joe was like, "Come over here, stand right here." I'm like, Coach, I ain't even saying that. I said, no showboating. You don't need to
Hmm.
showboat. You just made a great play. You don't need to showboat. So I was like, yeah, I understand. But this is a game full of emotions, and you got a lot of young guys out here just playing it hard to bottle it up and just not do nothing and walk back to the huddle. So I think he used to say this. He used to say this 96, 97 class gonna kill me.
Yeah. So, when you got to Penn State, was there an upperclassman that maybe you looked up to at the time, or was there someone who kind of took you under your wing to kind of show you the way? I'm sure, obviously, a lot of the guys there probably saw your potential right away, and
I think
I know that's
a lot of the guys, man. It was like a family, man. It was like a big family. We had a lot of guys from Virginia on the team. I think at one point the whole secondary might have been from Virginia, or almost. When you're talking about Balju, Bruce Branch, who switched from receiver to corner,
mm-hmm,
David Macklin, Anthony King. Um, we just and then you have Tikus Pettigrew, who was from North Carolina.
mm-hmm,
So we had a lot of guys that was close to the area. The Collins boys when I got there, Sean Lee,
mm-hmm,
Shino. So a lot of those guys, was there. We had a as far as the secondary, we had a good mix of older guys and younger guys, and we were just a tight knit, unit
mm-hmm.
as far as the defense goes. But we also, for me, Curtis Zenas was one that kind of took me on I can remember after practice, he said, "Come on, let's go. We're gonna go to the bar." I said, "I can't go to the bar." He's like, "You can go anywhere I go. I'm going if you going." So I'm like, "All right, well, let's go." So, but it was cool. We had a good time.
Yeah, and funny enough, he made a transition from linebacker to
The running
to
back.
to
Hmm.
to running back. Now, did you play against any of those guys in high school, all being from Virginia at any point in time?
No, because Bruce was in Richmond, Val was in Northern Virginia outside of DC, and I was in Virginia Beach area. So, I mean, I grew up playing. I grew up playing against Plexico Bears in high school, Dre Bly, Michael Vick. I'm from that area. So, Bruce and those guys. Me and Bruce met the summer going into our senior year
Mm-hmm.
at camp. So all of him and his teammates used to be always at camp, and we was up at camp. And Bill Kinney introduced me and Bruce, I think our junior year at camp. So in the summertime, my junior year, we used to hang with each other. He'd come down to hang out with me, or I'd go up to Richmond and hang out with him. So, that's kind of how we started to form our bond, and we was roommates at Penn State the whole 4 years.
And you mentioned Allen Iverson. I mean, the rumor out there for years is he was potentially a better football player than basketball player, as crazy as that sounds. So how really good was he? I know obviously him playing for the Sixers, a lot of Penn State fans, Sixer fans, growing up over the past couple decades. How really good was he? And how did he compare to Michael Vick? I'm not sure if you
Well, he was the Vic before Vic.
Okay.
So what you see Vic doing in college and pro, Chuck was doing in high school. And probably if he was a little bit bigger, he would probably tell you he would have rather played football from some of the stuff I heard him say. But he was a hell of an athlete, and he was the best athlete on the field, football and basketball, when he was playing. So, that kind of says a lot for a man 170 pounds. 170 pounds.
And so just kicking back to your time at Penn State, what were some of the more memorable games that you played at, ones that maybe like you sensed how important they were leading up to the game, and your kind of reaction after?
I want to say even my freshman year, man, when we played Michigan, we was number 1 in the country. They was number 2 in the country. We heading up to that game. We ended up going into the game. We lost to them. But just to see, how to prepare and, how to prepare for a big game, right? And it was different. And you talking about being number 1 and I think they was 3, we was number 1.
I remember that Keith Jackson
right.
on the call.
Right,
on the call in that game. That was
right. That's
momentum.
A big game. Yeah, right. And you talking about all the chips on the line at the time, and I think they had just won the national championship the year before, or maybe
that was the year. Yeah,
that was the year.
On
right.
the way to it.
Right, that was the year. So just to see, man, and to walk out into that stadium and see 100 and at the time I think it was 106 or like 112, 106, I believe it was. It was exciting. It was very exciting.
Yeah, I had that down as one of the more memorable games that you guys played. Obviously, early in career. I remember watching on my mom's couch. I mean, the Curtis Enos, that was the jersey that they sold, the number 39. That's what I was wearing. I mean, after a game like that, obviously Woodson, Anthony Thomas. I mean, that was Brian Greasy, obviously pretty tremendous team. Just how challenging is that? As a team and as a young player, a lot of build-up. You're number 1 class in the country, coming in number 1 team in the country. You're playing this team at home, and obviously the outcome didn't go as any of us wanted. But I was just curious what that was like and how you kind of managed that as a young athlete.
Well, Joe always try to make sure we stay focused one game at a time. And we went out to play. It was a great game. I think we could, if we would have made a play here or there, or maybe the game was called a little different. I think back then, our offense wasn't as wide open as it is today, right? And on defense, we used to always say, if our offense could score more points, we gonna win, because we're not gonna allow them to score. We're not gonna allow them to score much. So right now it's funny because I remember a couple of years ago talking to LeVar and other guys said, "Man, what if we had this offense like a couple of years ago?" It was like we would have been undefeated. We wouldn't have lost the game, because our motto was score. We won't. If we got a lead, don't worry about it. We're not gonna let them score.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and obviously you make mistakes at some point, but at the end of the day, you just make the mistake going full speed.
And what about the 99 Miami game? I heard you mention that in another interview, one of your more memorable games. That being your junior year, and again, kind of starting the season, Sports Illustrated #1 on the cover, going down there, and such a back and forth game, and obviously that Miami team still, a year early stack. Mike Rumph, Ed Reed, Dan Morgan, Damian Lewis. I mean, James Jackson, Wayne Moss, Franks. I mean, that team was, incredible. All that buildup going into the game, and I have to ask, what was Joe's reaction when the LeVar answered the question about Dan Morgan? The ESPN reporter asked him, and he said, "Who's Dan Morgan?" And
Right. Joe,
I'm just curious, how much of that got back to him, or does that go back to the thing about
everything
his
got
way?
back to Joe. Everything got back to Joe. So it was everything kind of got back to Joe. I think at the time he didn't like us to give like poster board information, right? So to give the team some more exciting or some more get to go come out to players, right? That team was stacked. We were stacked. We were stacked, but that team might have the most number one player, drafted players in the country, like still to this day on record.
Yeah.
It was a young team, so we got them a little early, and it took us to the last play of the game, basically on our side to win the game with that touchdown pass to Chaffee. So it was an exciting game. It was a lot of NFL players on that field that day. And we had a great time. Those guys are cool. We friends with a lot of those guys today. Rashard Casey, who was our quarterback at the time, one of his high school teammates was on the team. So it's funny because that summer we spent in Miami, some of us, me, Bruce, Rashard, X30, and maybe Ron Graham, we spent the summer in Miami with those guys, just hanging out. So, we knew a lot of the guys, so it was always fun and just, competitiveness.
Yeah. And you mentioned Rashard Casey. Obviously, he's from Hoboken. I think he was like 3 or 4 years right before the offenses really to kind of adapt to him, and heard even stories around. Now, is it true Joe tried to have him during practice stay in the pocket? There was something around his waist, some belt or something to like. Are those just like message boards rumors, or is there any truth
You
to?
ever seen Rashard play? You
Yeah,
seen tape of
yeah, I
Rashard?
saw the highlights. I mean, he went to Hoboken. I grew up in North
Okay.
Jersey. I mean, I followed his whole career there at Penn State, and obviously he started there his redshirt senior year, your senior year in 2000. So.
Yeah, Rashad was. I like to tell people Rashad was. I tell my friends, from Virginia, because unfortunately they didn't really get a chance to see him as much, and in the starting role. But when they did see him, they was like, "Yo, where he come from? Why he didn't play more?" And I was like, whatever Joe Rule's reason around was not playing him more. But I always felt like he was the better quarterback, or he would put us in a better position to win more games. And that was no knock against anybody else. I think he just had all the tools with the right coaching, with the right development. He could have been, special.
Yeah, and just how challenging was that situation? I know going to senior year, I mean, the unfortunate incident there in Hoboken, and obviously his name wound up being cleared, which I thought was a bunch of crock of crap, and excuse my language, but but for Joe to stand by him at that point in time when there certainly was a lot of pundits that were saying like, oh, he shouldn't play, and he believed in his story, stuck with him, and Casey was obviously there for 4 years. I was just curious, what was that like internally, just being his teammate, seeing that transpire, and how that changed your perception of Joe, of how much he kind of stuck by him in a really challenging spot and wind up being vindicated.
Well, Rashad was one of my close friends and teammates, so we still talk to this day. So, for Joe, knowing what happened, how it happened, and Rashad telling Joe like, "This is what happened," and Joe believing him, like, "Okay, if that's what you tell me what happened, I'm gonna believe you because I don't have no reason not to believe you." And I think that's what's wrong today, where we quit to judge someone when they let them go through the court process before we make a decision on why. We already guilty, clearing somebody that's guilty and we don't even know what happened. So, for me, because I kind of went through something with at the end of that year too as well. So, and it was kind of the same thing. He kind of stuck by us, and it was like, look, if you tell me that's what it is, I'm gonna go with it until you prove me wrong. Then you good. So, we got Rashard back. I got Rashard back, and let's just go out and play. And it was a lot of people, alumni. I'm sure was probably they always was tight on Joe, trying to get him out of there. So I'm sure it was a lot of people breathing out his neck. But at the end of the day, he stuck with Rashard, and everything came out at the end, and that he was cleared. I actually think he actually won a lawsuit
He
against Penn
did.
State.
He did. He won a
Right,
pretty
right,
sizable
right,
civil suit,
right.
which is good for him. But I mean, that certainly wasn't the only thing that year. You had obviously Adam, the tragic injury at Ohio State, one of the best Penn Staters around.
Hmm.
I mean, what was the team's reaction to that? I know everyone won the 43 decal on their helmet. I mean, what was that like as a young athlete seeing, one of your, I mean, again, he was one of the top recruits, one of the most respected guys on the
Right.
team from what I heard. What was that kind of rally kind of call like after Adam went
It
down?
it it was different. It was a different excitement. Um, and Adam was like a little brother. So when that class came in, it was Adam Talaferro, Gerald Smith, Yaakov, who
Israel.
they used to all just hang in our room. Like, why y'all always in our room? Like they
Hmm.
was like, you guys cool. We want to hang out with you guys. They was the freshmen. We were seniors or about to be seniors. So they just wanted to hang out, right? And so, and we got to see how special Adam was in practice. We figured, in a couple of years he'd be one of the top corners in the country. And the crazy thing on that play when he got hurt, he wasn't even supposed to be in the game. Bruce Brent's shoulder pad broke here, the strap broke, and so he came out. He came in for those two plays, and
Okay.
and that's kind of. And if you watch the tape and rewatch the tape, I was the safety to his side in 2D, and when the ball came to that side, I came up. Somebody pushed me in the back from like a clipping. He was coming from the side, so I almost fell directly on him when he
Wow.
fell. And so it was kind of crazy, and it wasn't a hard hit. It wasn't like it was just awkward position, and his head bent down, and it could freak accident, man. So, but the team kind of rallied around him, once and for him, the story is luckily we was in playing Ohio State
Columbus. Yeah.
in Columbus, and right across the street they had some medical center where he could get attended to, and I believe Dr. Sebastianelli, our team doctor at the time, ended up giving him a shot, and from my understanding, that shot probably saved him from being paralyzed.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible story. And then
Right.
obviously, a year later leads the whole team on the field. Just fast forwarding a little bit later that year, and I know obviously that 2000 year obviously was a little challenging kind of record wise and everything that was going on. But I will tell you one of the most memorable games that year for me as a fan, and as one of my favorite games of all time, despite what the team's
Purdue.
record was. You took a right at that Purdue game. That Purdue game will always be very near and dear to my heart as a Penn State fan. Not only capping off beating Drew Brees all 4 years, but Casey having his breakout game, you having a phenomenal game and really kind of leading the charge and just in the heels of everything that happened with Rashard and then Adam, and then to have that game at home and win that game even for Joe too. You mentioned like everyone getting on Joe's back with the record and everything that was going on. you know and obviously you're hit on Drew Brees, and the game coming down all the way to the end there. I mean, it was such a
Hmm.
such a memorable game. I think you got a defensive touchdown that game as well. But yeah, just if you can speak to me about that game, what it was like, what it meant to your team, and where does that rank kind of your all-time wins as a player?
That game was probably the most exciting game I ever played in college,
Hmm.
right? Because it ended up being a night game. It finished at night,
Yeah,
right? Because
I
it was
remember.
late in the season, and back then we always wanted to play a night game, and Joe didn't like night games, and so it was obviously after coming off of, I think it was a week after the Adam situation. And so everybody was pumped. The guys was excited. They wanted to win for Adam, and we just wanted to get back on track because that was a tough season for us. After opening up the USC, losing to USC at the Kickoff Classic in New Jersey, so we wanted to just kind of get back on track. We wasn't used to losing, especially
No.
my class, because when I came in, we was #1 in the country, first year, second year, and the third year. And so going into that season, we knew we was rebuilding at some positions and it was going to be tough, but we didn't think it was going to be that tough.
Yeah. Yeah. It was it was an interesting year. But yeah, like a lot of good memories buried in there. I have to ask you, obviously you were known as a ferocious hitter, and I think that's why some of the fans remember you so well. Obviously I've looked at your highlights over the years. Just curious, what are some of your most memorable hits on guys from your time at Penn State that you remember? And I'll throw out one. The
I
hit
think I know
on.
what you're about to say.
Give me one. Give me one.
I think I know what you're about to say. Randall L.
I was just gonna say at the RCA Dome, his
Right.
helmet came off. That one is
Yeah.
obviously up there.
Kenyon Rambo, safety receiver at
That was
Mississippi State.
I literally, that was my second one written down right there, Rambo. I swear to you, you're literally reading my mind.
Yeah. And then probably it's cool, man. It's quite a few. And one of them, I don't know if he didn't like me telling this story, but one day we was in practice. I think I was a sophomore, and we was practicing against each other, and it was the first team defense against the first team offense, and it was probably 2 days before class started, and so we doing plays, and uh, Kevin Thompson caught a play, and I see the whole time I see Chaffee coming up on a skinny post, and I said, I know he's not about to throw this ball. He see me standing right here, so he threw the ball. I came down, hit Chaff. Chaff kind of fell. I fell on top of Chaff, and I'm laying there. We both just knocked out on the ground. So some of the guys on defense come over there. It was like, help me up, and then I was laying on my back. They was like, your nose broke. And I was like, they like, your nose all the way over here. So Doc Sebastianelli came over, and he was just talking to me. And as he talking to me, he just snapped it back.
Oh man!
And then I had 2 black guys for the first couple of days of class.
Untold practice stories, but yeah, no, those hits were great. So the other thing, the interception on Tom Brady, that Michigan game in '99. Do you brag to your kids' family? Hey, I had this interception on Tom back in '99. I mean,
it's funny, man, because I don't really talk a lot about it. And my oldest son is 16, so he learned probably more from social media and Google than he do. So he was like, "Dad, you didn't tell me you intercept Tom Brady." I was like, "Okay, and Tom Brady, whatever."
Yeah.
And I seen him play Drew Brees too, and this. I was like, "Yeah," and he only 16, so he really didn't get a chance to see it, all of that. So he see it and he kind of talk about it now when he look at it on social media.
Yeah, those are great quarterbacks being the same conference. Do you have any good Spider stories? I know one of the most revered members of the Penn State family. Everyone always seems to have kind of a good Spider story or two. I was curious if you had one from your time there.
Spider was always good, man. He was always good energy, always just good to be around him. So I think for me, all the time being around Spider was good because if you met Spider and you know him, his energy was always good. He was a great dude, and he'll do anything to help you. So he used to do these in camp. He used to do these Heisman poses. Put on the leather hat, come out and do the Heisman pose. So that was always fun for the kids to see. That was in camp. So that's probably one of my most memorable things with Spider.
And what's your relationship with Coach Franklin right now? I mean, it seems very obvious that he's made a very conceited effort to go back and build relationships with a lot of the Letterman All-American. I think there was like a locker room there for former or current NFL players with their names on it. I'm just curious what your relationship's like with him and maybe some things he's done to kind of reach out or kind of cultivate the relationship with yourself and other guys that you've played with.
I think Coach Franklin doing a great job. I mean, he got a big job, big responsibility. So I think the Rose Bowl that Saquon
Hmm.
played in, I think around that time we was all at the Rose Bowl, and he invited a lot of the Lettermen over. It was just for the Lettermen, and he kind of spoke to everyone and be like, "Look, I want to build a better relationship with you guys because you guys are Penn State." And so I think he's working on it now. We for the last 2 3 years they've been doing a Letterman weekend where the Letterman come up doing I think it's before spring ball I think it is or after spring ball one of them. So I went 2 years. So it's kind of like come up, hang out with the coaching staff, and that same weekend they have a lot of recruits in town. So I think he's doing a great job, man, and just need to keep it up. I
And what
think I
have you?
think I
Oh, go
think
ahead.
our fans is a little spoiled. So when it don't go our way, we start talking about get rid of them. You be careful what you wish for. I mean, 10 years. I know we want to see a national championship,
Hmm.
but 10 wins, 10 could be better than some of the alternatives.
Yeah, and I feel that it's been tough, and I think part of the challenge that has made his job really tough is this whole idea of only four teams in the college football playoff, and that has created, I think, unrealistic expectations not only at Penn State, but you look at the coaching turnover at other major universities, what Texas A&M is doing. I think not only having four teams, but us being in a position where we had to beat Michigan and Ohio State just to make the college football playoff. So I feel like Penn State was probably in the most challenging position to make the playoffs where they were situated. And then that goes back on Coach Franklin, where, if he was in the Big 12 or the ACC, we would be going pretty much every
Every
single
year,
year.
every
So
year.
I, I
Right,
don't,
right,
I don't know how fair it is. And just, I think there's some games where fans have a right to be kind of frustrated with him. But overall, I mean, like, we've been right there. Like, I think if and I made the point last year, if Parker Washington returned, this team's going to the college football playoff
right, right,
last year. I
right,
mean, that's
right,
literally, all they needed. And his best team, which would have been the COVID year, wound up getting taken away from him because he had Parsons, Jason Owe, Lucetta, Jahan Dotson, Clifford,
right.
Journey Brown had the heart injury. So he's had some really, I think, some tough breaks along the way that get masked. And then I guess my last thing is people complain about not beating Ohio State, but then, they get jabbed on the call in the 2014 game with the dropped interception and the field
Right.
goal after, and then but they don't kind of cut him a break. So I think they're going to make the college football playoff this year. I think the conversation is going to change. I agree with you. I mean, he's their best choice moving forward. No one's perfect.
Right.
I mean, Nick Saban ain't coming out of retirement, so we got to stay the course. And last defense is he's not losing anyone to the portal,
Right.
right? I mean, it has to say something
Right.
about the
The
relationships he's
relationships.
dealing with,
Right. And
with these.
like and I think it's a different time when you talk about college sports now with that portal and that NIL situation. So um, he recruiting the right kids, right?
Hmm.
And I kind of had a conversation with someone on that staff about the NIL, the state of NIL, and the transfer portal, um, and just the way they feel about it. It's probably the way Joe would feel about it,
Hmm.
knowing Joe, and just making sure you're recruiting the right kids. Unfortunately, we had to lose a receiver in Andre Lambert Smith this year, entered the portal. But we haven't really lost a lot of players, and at least not key players, to the portal. Um, and I like the fact that we don't go jump in the portal and just try to fill every need, because you're gonna have those guys there a year, probably just a year. Chop worked out for us, but Chop still had 2 years to play.
Hmm.
And a lot of times you go jump in that portal, you take away from the young guys the development of the guys that you brought in as a recruiting class. And so I like the way they handle that by not just jumping in the portal and be like USC a couple of years, had 13, 14 kids in on the transfer portal. That's why they
He
up.
gave up 50.
That's why they so up and down. One year they good, the next year they not. Like just no consistency. But I
Yeah.
think if I got a thing with the whole Franklin experience and the staff, and it's probably not even against him. Like if you look ever since he's been here, where they have 4 or 5 different offensive coordinators,
Yeah.
and the defense the whole time has been solid.
Hmm.
And if you look at it, you would see it. Why is a struggle on offense? They really didn't have an identity. And you're talking about for a quarterback to have 4 or 5 different coordinators, in a short period of time, because all of those coordinators was getting head coaching jobs leaving,
Hmm.
and so they would have to replace a coordinator and learn a whole new system. That's tough. And so you can see it though, because the consistency was always on defense, and
Hmm.
and the offense struggled. They didn't move the ball. They didn't move the ball up and down the field like they're supposed to. But that was expected, I think, in that situation.
Yeah, and I felt last year. I mean, I thought the offense coordinator didn't really do enough to help Drew in the offense. I mean, I was watching the Ohio State game. I mean, we literally ran 5 trick plays, right? And the joke I make, we threw the kitchen sink, the front sink, the barn sink, the slop sink at him. Like, gee, like we got to be a little bit more prepared. I mean, 1 or 2 trick plays, cool, but I think the third or fourth went for desperation. And even in a similar way, I think they should have worked Bo Prabula in the offense when they had kind of Michael Robinson and Zach Mills a little bit more, just to give a different look, to the defense. But, kind of water in the bridge, and I give Franklin credit for making the move when he did and moving on. And I like the hire, but it's tough too as a head coach. I mean, you when you have good guys like Manny that leave, it's
Right,
it's
right,
it's
right.
it's tough.
It's tough, and my thing with that the coordinator and the play calling those 2 games is like, okay, you watch other games, you open up either one, you don't have confidence in your young quarterback, or
Hmm.
you just not used to being on that stage as an offensive coordinator, right? So you keep doing what you did to get here. You can't get to the big game and change your whole system and
Hmm.
change your whole scheme. Like, I mean, if you watch the games, they threw the ball up the field.
Hmm.
Um, and then when they get to playing Michigan and Ohio State, they don't.
Hmm.
They get predictable. They throwing everything inside the hashes, not almost 10-yard curls and digs. They didn't throw the ball up the field, down the field. I mean, you're talking about DeAndre Lambert Smith. He ran a 4.27. I don't care.
Hmm.
I don't care who he playing against on Ohio State, Alabama, whoever. He can get open.
Hmm.
So I mean, and if you don't go up, throw the ball up down the field, nobody's going to respect the receivers. And I know that's one of the weak links on the team, if you want to say a weak link, having someone step up at the receiver position. But those tight ends are solid. I mean,
Oh yeah, they're good.
you talking about 3 first-round draft picks that possibly can be in that tight end room, from the kid from last year that went to Jacksonville, and
Brent
the two
Strange.
now, like,
Hmm.
or 44 coming back, but
Warren, yeah, Ty Warren,
Warren
he's
coming
back.
back, but the one leaving now, I mean, they talking
Theo
about probably
Johnson,
late,
yeah.
late second round. I mean, maybe late first round, early second round draft pick when I was looking at
Hmm.
the other day. And those guys talking about 6'5", 6'6", can run and spread the field. So I mean, I feel like it was a lot more we could have done on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just curious, I mean, what advice would you have to Coach Franklin, right? If he called you and say, hey, like, what advice would you have for me as a head coach?
I mean, I think he does a great job, man. We're talking about recruiting, building a program, and his guys love him. I think when you talk about defensive side of the ball, those guys solid, right?
Hmm.
Offensive side of the ball, I think it's more finding the identity on the offensive side of the ball, getting some playmakers, and just open it up, which I feel like he want to do, but I don't. I feel like he feel like he don't have the twos on the outside to be able to do that, because he
Hmm.
got. I mean, listen, he might got the best tandem at running back in the country, and I've been saying that since those guys was freshmen. Like,
Hmm.
you talking about 2 of the best running backs in the country in the same backfield, and it kind of reminded me of when Saquon and Miles was there, right?
Hmm.
And it's funny because a lot of people didn't even know Miles played at Penn State his rookie year in Philly. Um, but that's kind of how they remind you of. And then when you look at those tight ends and offensive tackles, offensive guards, they solid on offense.
Hmm.
They need some playmakers on the outside, and I feel like once we get those, we missing the Jihad Dotson, right? We need
Hmm.
that Jihad Dotson on the outside.
Yeah, and even Parker Washington. I
And
mean,
Parker
I
Washington,
I
right?
I
I
thought
agree.
he was I thought he was the one missing piece last year.
Par-
That
Parker
if he came
Washington,
back.
he remind me of Keenan McCardell, who I played with in
Hmm.
Jacksonville. He's not the fastest, he's not the biggest, but he gonna get in that slot. He gonna get open. He gonna work. He gonna work the slot, and he gonna get the job done. Because he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the biggest, but he knew how to get open, and he can catch everything that you threw to him. So I feel like we missed him big time his senior year because of that. What towards ACL, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, his lower leg, and then he had the
Mm-hmm.
ankle, and then wound up going to the draft a year early, which I think was a little surprise, but he wound up getting some burn. Him and Brenton there in
In
Jacksonville
Jacksonville,
late,
right?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
late
Yeah.
late in certainly late in the year. Um, your process in terms of I was curious. Obviously, your time at Penn State comes up. You start to go through the draft process. Just curious, kind of what that was like, and did you get drafted where you felt where you were kind of projected by your advisors? I'm just always curious how accurate the advice is, different athletes get as they enter that draft process and what that was like.
Yeah, the process started. It was funny, how the whole process started with the agent situations and just interviewing agents because me and Balju was roommates our senior
Hmm.
year, and so these agents called the room one day, and I didn't know they was agents, so I answered the phone. I answered the phone, and they was like, "Is Bal there?" So I was like, "Yeah, hold on, let me get him." So I gave Bal the phone, and I'm about to leave. They hung up. They hung up and called back,
Hmm.
and they was like, "Is this James?" And I was like, "Why? Who is this?" And it was like, and we ended up signing with EA Services,
Hmm.
who's Tony Agnon, who at the time was the director of the agent committee, who two Penn State former players was agents on that staff. Rich Rosa and Eddie Johnson, they was on that. They was agents with that firm. And so I was like, yeah, this James. They was like, man, we've been trying to call you for 2 months. They said your number not listed on the directory in school. I said, yeah, that's purposely because I ain't want y'all
Yeah.
to call me. So, so me and Val end up going to dinner with them that night, and we signed with them, and that was history. Those guys was good for me because they kind of taught me the business as it was going on, right? Just to be responsible for paying taxes and stuff that you got to do, not spending a lot of money, not getting in the locker room. 'Cause I remember not getting in the locker room. You're on a rookie salary.
Hmm.
My locker is next to Jimmy Smith, all American receiver,
Yeah.
who making $10 million a year. His checks are $900,000 a week,
Hmm.
and mine's 20.
Yeah.
And so we looking at them like and just not getting into that locker room stuff and keeping up with the Joneses and guys pulling up with Lamborghinis and yeah they make 20 times more than you.
Hmm.
And just to be, just how to, manage your money and stuff. So that was good.
Yeah. Well, that answer kind of goes to what I was just going to ask. I mean, what advice would you have to, an 18, 19-year-old James Boyd who's being recruited, and you have the NIL aspect, you have, now you're essentially a walking, talking brand at 18 years old. You're given all these opportunities, both on and off the field, financially. What advice would you have for those young athletes coming into college with all these opportunities that are in front of them?
It's funny you asked me that. I said this to someone about 2 years ago when the NIL deals and the stuff started coming about. I said, I hope you teaching them guys how to be responsible and teach them about taxes and how to pay taxes. I said, so you're talking about giving them all of this money and they have no idea what to do with the money other than spend it and not understand that they have to pay taxes on this money, right?
Hmm.
And teach them about money because a lot of guys don't come from money in those situations and they really don't have the support around them. The NFL guys don't have support around them. Better yet, you think the 18 and 19-year-olds going to have that support around them. Just making sure they have a good support around them to teach them about money and what they need to do with the money.
Got it. No, I think that's excellent advice because I don't think the five-star athletes really even understand how big a business this is, and
Right.
how much of an opportunity it is, and potentially a short window if you don't capitalize in college, and how quickly that
And
that could go away.
I think that's another
Um,
one too. Like, making sure you let the guys know to capitalize off all the relationships that they building at the time, right? Because after you finish there, like you said, short period of time. After you
mhm,
finish there, the relationships you build can go a long way. And understanding that you're a brand. And
mhm.
when you leave here, you know, set yourself up to be able to do whatever it is you want to do.
And I know you've been very generous with your time, and I want to turn over just for fans, older fans like me who are interested. I mean, 40, I feel like I call myself old. What's James doing right now? What is he involved in? What are you interested in? And how much are you keeping tabs of the Penn State football team?
Yeah, I come up, man. I just moved to Houston from Northern Virginia, D.C. area, so I'm a little further away. I started podcasting. That's the name of my podcast. I started podcasting about a year and a half ago, but I haven't really done anything this year. Starting to get back in it. Probably for the last 10 years, I've been working in the medical device space. I work with neuro orthopedic spine surgeons in the operating room.
Okay.
But I also do some business consulting on the side as far as real estate and stuff goes. So I try to do a little bit of everything. They say you need to have 5 or 6 strands of income, so I need 5 or 6 strands. So
Yeah, I have young kids myself, and maybe 7 or 8 by the time they college, wherever it may be. I have to put in a good word to Coach Franklin, maybe for a scholarship. But what topics do you cover on your podcast?
we talk about it, man. It's business and sports. So I have Adam
Hmm.
Talaferro on. I had some business owners on. I had a bunch of people on, man. So I'm excited. I want to probably start back up around the July August time. So I just want to make sure I got enough. I did about 20 episodes, I think it is.
Okay.
In the first time around. So just kind of looking to kind of set up some appointments, set up some interviews, and kind of get back into it and kind of help get a steady thing going, dropping at least two episodes a month, starting this fall coming up.
Got it. No, well, listen, I appreciate your time. I probably went way over. I just want to let
You
you know
good?
I greatly appreciate it. Like I said, you were one of my favorite players, and have the opportunity to talk to you and kind of hear all these stories was awesome. I think a lot of the fans who listened in really enjoyed them, because a lot of this, never really
Oh yeah, no
was
problem at
known
all. No
but
problem at all.
before. But I appreciate everything. Good luck with the podcast. Hope to see you up at a game, and appreciate your ongoing support of Penn State football, James,
I
and enjoyed watching you play.
appreciate
Thanks
it,
so
man.
much for the time.
Thank you.
You got it.
All
Really
right.
enjoyed it.
All right, buddy.
Take care.
Later.